But this is a political conference. I mean, that is a difference. This is a conference that is supposed to be attracting the base of the Republican Party, and you have 3%ers and Proud Boys walking around.
I mean, let's be candid, Brianna. Both parties have extreme elements that are just, out of bounds in terms of a lot of behaviors, thoughts, and proposals. And it's incumbent upon the rest of us, whoever going to get this thing pulled back together.
But these are folks, anti-government extremists, who feel welcome enough that they are attending a political conference.
Well, I bet if I went to any number of leftist gatherings, I could find a bunch of goofballs as well.
Do you know of any?
Well, do I know of militant leftist?
I'm saying, do you have an actual example of that? I asked you, Governor, because this is an actual example. Do you know of an actual example on the left that basically says it's all the same left and right here?
Well, we have all kinds of examples of people who are encouraging violence or behaviors that we would otherwise accept are outside the norm on the left, demonstrating that all over the country.
But a political conference where a former president is speaking.
Well, what difference does it make whether it's in a hotel ballroom or a street corner? What's the difference?
I think it speaks to whether they feel welcome at a particular event. And I ask because you're aware that the U.S. government has made clear about how big of a threat anti-government extremism is, that this is a huge threat to national security.
And I would put Antifa and other groups on the left in the same category.
But I will say, I hear what you're saying about that. We have seen some violence. The federal government does not put them in the same category, just to be clear. And I'm just wondering, you said that you would find goofballs on the left. I don't see actually the example on the left of a political conference where you have anti-government extremists showing up. And I'm just asking you if you do, because you said that if you looked, you would find them.
All right. Well, I think if you and I, or you send a CNN crew that wasn't otherwise, obvious and evident to a left gathering, not the Democratic Party's, national convention, but some ancillary, group like their version of CPAC, and you went around with a camera or a notepad or otherwise just observed, we could find you some people who would be problematic from your perspective and from a normal or the typical population's perspective. So the idea that your point is Proud Boys or whatever extremist groups are milling around CPAC, that's uncomfortable and shouldn't be embraced by the Republican Party. Okay, that's a fair point. But let's also agree that in fairness, that this is not just a problem of the right, that there's also extremist militant elements on the left, and we should call that out as well.
I mean, thank God someone called out a Republican in the middle of the perpetual both sides debate, which, by the way, is the closest that Republicans will ever come to admitting fault. If the left is at fault, they blame the left. If the right's at fault, they still manage to blame the left. It's never just the Republicans, it's both sides. Everyone is to blame. Domestic terrorist organizations walked around at the biggest conservative conference in the country? Well, clearly Antifa's at fault. Got it. This is CNN's Brianna Keilar speaking to former Republican Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, who, frankly, was served a softball here because it is easy to simply condemn the Proud Boys or the 3%ers, which are provably violent far-right militia organizations. And if Pawlenty actually believed that they were as crazy as he himself claims they are, then that's all he had to say. And then it would be over, and this wouldn't even be news. But because Republicans are incapable of accepting responsibility for anything, because they have to both sides themselves into oblivion to the point where they're almost parodying themselves, suddenly a non-issue turns into a national story, all because the party of personal responsibility is incapable of actually taking any personal responsibility. And by the way, this interview right here is a testament to just how much outlets like Fox News have tainted Republicans like Pawlenty. Because if he was on Fox and made some sweeping, baseless statement about how, sure, there were far-right lunatic fringe militias at CPAC, but there are also far-right radicals at their conferences, he wouldn't get an ounce of pushback, because it's not about facts, it's about perpetuating the messaging that they're trying to promote. But when Keilar asks the simple follow-up of, do you know any? It leaves him crumbling on air. And that's because his talking points hit a wall, that wall being the pesky little matter of the truth. In reality, while these militias strutted around proudly at CPAC, no, there are not far-left militias parading around any Democratic conferences. And yet their presence at CPAC shouldn't come as a surprise, considering this is who the Republican Party is courting. They just incited an armed insurrection at the US Capitol. You think they're interested in courting monks? No, they want these people. They want the violence. That's why they've gone on a months-long disinformation campaign trying to absolve those who participated in the January 6th insurrection as tourists, as patriots, as martyrs, as victims. They will paint them as anything but guilty because Republicans and the white supremacists who serve them are on the same side. Consider too, top law enforcement officials say the biggest domestic terror threat in the United States comes from white supremacists. What do you think Republicans would say if the Iraqi government had members of ISIS walking around their political conferences? Do you think they would just cast it off and say, well, you know, there's kooky people at these things? Of course not. But because these domestic terror threats are the people that they've spent their time and energy courting, don't count on any of these Republicans to give any semblance of a stronger rebuke than the one that we're hearing right here, which is basically, yeah, well, Antifa is bad too. And look, in fairness, Pawlenty was actually leagues more measured than any of his other Republican colleagues, and at least he was willing to say that these organizations shouldn't be embraced by the Republican Party, even if he did have to undermine his point by immediately pivoting to his both sidesism. But at the same time, the fact that I can stand here and applaud the guy for acknowledging that white supremacists and far-right militias probably shouldn't be the face of the Republican Party in the United States is a testament to just how far the GOP has fallen. The fact that this statement is considered courageous in today's Republican Party is all the proof you need that the GOP has gone completely off the rails. And by the way, even if Republicans did manage to disavow these organizations, which they won't, but that's beside the point, the fact remains that it's not just the elected officials' acceptance of groups like the Proud Boys, it's the fact that groups like the Proud Boys know they have a place in the Republican Party. During the 2018 cycle, Andrew Gillum of Florida said this about Ron DeSantis during one of their debates. Now, I'm not calling Mr. DeSantis a racist, I'm simply saying the racists believe he's a racist. If the people who harbor the most disgusting views in this country not only support your party, but are as comfortable as the Proud Boys were at CPAC, then you don't even have to disavow them because the point's already been made. If the white supremacists openly support you, there is a reason. And just like the Proud Boys and the 3%ers can see it, so can the rest of us. If you enjoyed that video and you're looking for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brianna Cohen. It's a no BS look at the top stories of the week, along with interviews with the top names in politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, and more. Again, that's No Lie with Brianna Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, click the subscribe link right here on this screen to join the more than 1 million people who've already subscribed to my channel. And finally, to donate to my Don't Be a Mitch Fund, where I'm raising money for a whole raft of different voter outreach and voter registration groups in the closest states ahead of midterms in 2022, including Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. You can find that link on this screen as well. Thanks for watching.